like a dog. He died like a coward.
And we're back. It's episode 19. I am Dave, the Nerd Emperor, and as always, hello there, folks. I am your host for the War, Sports, Politics, and Dragons podcast. I hope everybody's having a great Friday. It is March the 6th. We're in March already. Can you believe it? Spring is almost upon us here in the People's Republic of Maryland. Got a lot to cover today in the podcast, so let's go ahead and get our announcements out of the way, and then we can skip all that gristle and get straight to the meat. Woof. Wow, it's been quite a week, though, hasn't it? My goodness. As always, though, you can follow us not just on Spotify, where we began, but on Amazon, Audible, and iHeartRadio as well. Still working out the Apple Podcast thing. I've done something stupid and wrong and haven't managed to get on there, but we will be soon. And then once we are, you'll be able to listen to all the old ones, too. So anyway, if you want to help us get better tech, you can donate through our Patreon page, which I'll mention in a minute. And you can also do it through Cash App and Venmo. Each handle is the same, WSPD Pod. As I just said, our Patreon page is patreon.com/WSPDragons. It's for subscribers to get special extra content, and we have some free material up right now with some paywalled stuff coming out regularly too, including the second and third chapters of my first novel, Love's Crucible, for your enjoyment. That's for people that are starting at just $3. For just $3, folks, you can get in on the ground floor and you can read. I've got over 20 novels planned. 20. Okay? And we're roughing out 3 series of 6 plus a couple of individual pieces, and then I just had an idea hit the other day for something that's coming out on Patreon, which we'll mention later on. But sign up now. It's a wild ride, guys. You're going to enjoy it. Future chapters are going to be made available for paying sponsors, as I just said, and I'm already 25,000 more words into a second novel that goes in an entirely different direction, different characters, different setting, different everything, called The Mustard Seed. Chapters of that will run after Love's Crucible completes. I might intersperse the two, I don't know. But stay tuned, sign up, find out. Third novel, like I said, is in pre-planning. These are standalone novels, and we've got the 3 series of 6. The third novel is called Save, and again, goes in an entirely different direction, different people, different setting, different theme, because I'm capable of writing about more than one thing. So there you go. I guess all those years covering 19 different sports helped me learn how to change topics, but whatever. As you listen today, I am announcing yet another writing project, which we'll go ahead and hit you with at the very end if I remember to do it. And if I don't, it's no big deal because I've already announced it on Patreon. But that's enough prefacing. It's time for the show. And as always, we start with war. As our opening quote from President Trump from 2019, when al-Baghdadi, the leader of ISIS, was killed. It applies to Ayatollah Khamenei as well. I think he died like a dog. He died like a coward because he was a coward. Most bullies are cowards, and that's basically what he was. Now, from what I understand, his son has been appointed successor, but he may be dead too. I don't know. There have been reports of it, but I don't know if they've been confirmed. And if he's not, don't worry. He will be soon. Now, someone has asked me, why am I celebrating the deaths of people? Okay, and I'm just going to explain it to you in this context. It's very straightforward. To be honest, there are people in this world who do not deserve to be mourned. And a democidal maniac, someone like Khamenei, who murdered 30,000 protesters in 48 hours back in January. Remember, if you've listened to this podcast, you've heard me talk about those figures, guessing where they've stood. It's been estimated it was 20,000, it was 40,000, it's 30,000. We'll settle in the middle and call it around 30,000. They admitted to 6,000. Okay, so even if it's only the paltry sum of 6,000 human beings being slaughtered for having a difference of opinion, that in and of itself is 6,000 atrocities. Of course, Joseph Stalin supposedly said 1 death is a tragedy and 1 million deaths is a statistic, but then consider the source. He was a piece of shit too, and he's rotting in hell too. He and Khamenei and Hitler and Pol Pot and Mao Zedong and Idi Amin and so many other genocidal and democidal maniacs are there right now. as they deserve to be. Because as I said, there are people in this world who do not deserve to be mourned. Their deaths should be applauded. Okay? I don't remember anybody in American media complaining in 1942 when secret operatives assassinated SS High Mucky Muck. He wasn't in charge of the SS, that was Heinrich Himmler, but he was basically Himmler's second in command, Reinhard Heydrich, when he was killed with a bomb and gunfire in Prague. I don't recall anybody celebrating his death. You know why? Because that piece of shit didn't deserve to be mourned, nor did most of those who served with him and under him. Okay? I know, actually, most isn't even enough. Most isn't even enough. If you wore the death's head, you deserve the death's head. Let's say that. Okay? And people will say, well, only 3 to 5% of the Germans were ardent Nazis. Yeah, and look how that turned out. Now think about radical Islam representing 7 to 10% of 1.6 billion with a B people. What's 7% of 1.6 billion, folks? It's 112 million. So, wow, that's a lot, isn't it? Why, yes, it is. That's a lot of people around the world out of a population of 8 billion who want to kill you for not believing what they think, and Khamenei was one of them. Okay? People that don't believe what I believe, I don't wish them dead. I wish them knowledge. Okay? Because that's the only way you're going to get people onto your side, is to convince them. People say, though, violence never solved anything. Solved the Holocaust. It solved World War II. It solved slavery in the United States. So, shut up about that. And I want to know something. Why are all these international law scholars popping up suddenly? Where the hell were these idiots in just December, January, when Khamenei was murdering protesters by the thousand? Why? Why have you waited until now? Because now Israel's involved and they can blame Jews. I've been saying this for a month and a half. And it's true. And again, I'm not a Jew, nor do I plan to be. But it's true. It's simply true. Where were these people from 1979 and on? Okay, when the IRGC was the greatest state sponsor of terrorism. Let's think back. Nightclub bombings in South America and in Europe. Guess who did it? Hezbollah. Guess who sponsors Hezbollah? The IRGC. Go figure. Early 2020, a Ukrainian commercial airliner was shot down over Iran. Guess who did it? The IRGC, Flight 752. Look it up. The USS Cole bombing, one of our ships was hit by a suicide boat attack in Aden, a port down in Yemen, done by Al-Qaeda, backed and supported by the Khamenei regime in Iran. The 1983 Beirut bombing of the Marine Corps barracks, which killed 241 of our troops, Hezbollah, backed by Iran. The 1996 Khobar Towers bombings in Saudi Arabia, Hezbollah, supported by Iran. Drone attack on Tower 22 in Jordan 2 years ago, Shia militias, all backed by Iran. Where the hell were all the international law experts then? Where were they? Sit down and shut the hell up. I don't want to hear it anymore. As I talk about this, the U.S. and Israel and a number of other nations, including Saudi Arabia, which is a Muslim country, Bahrain, which is a Muslim country, Qatar, which is a Muslim country, Oman, which is a Muslim country, Kuwait, that's a Muslim country, the UAE, a Muslim country. Even Lebanon is on board now. Lebanon has declared Hezbollah illegal, and the Lebanese military is going after them. In Pakistan, there is practically a full-on war with Afghanistan, with the Pakistani army going after Al-Qaeda and other terrorist group sites in Afghanistan. Folks, we're at a turning point in the war on terror, because now even the Muslim community understands the threat of radical Islamism. And there are people talking about a school in Tehran that may or may not have been hit by American and Israeli forces. If it is, it's a tragedy. If it wasn't hit by American or Israeli forces, it's a tragedy. And I'm horribly heartbroken for the families of any child who dies, having lost one of my own. But let me say this. I'm not quite sure how to put it without sounding callous. And I don't want to sound callous, because losing children is a horrible, horrible thing. And a grieving parent, I'm still a grieving parent. It's been 3 years. Some good will come of it. It has to. Because that is what I carry with me from us having lost our daughter. Some good will come of it. Doesn't seem like it right now to some. But some good will come of it. And if you don't believe me, then you don't believe me. But 90 million people are struggling to be free, and they're rising up. Kurds in Kurdistan, which is a region in western Turkey, northern Iraq, and northwestern Iran, I believe also. It might border northwestern Iran. I may be mistaken exactly about the geographical borders of a state that doesn't physically exist right now. But anyway, the Kurdish forces are preparing themselves to engage Iran in case Iran attacks into Kurdistan. Everyone is on board except for 3 particular Muslim-dominated countries, those being Britain, France, and Spain. And as for Spain, Spain's utterly fucking useless in the world stage, to be honest. Spain hasn't been a power, realistically, since 1588. Okay? Back when the Spanish Armada got its ass handed to it by the British in a fight in the English Channel. Spain's empire had been on the decline for 300 years, and we basically put the cork in their bottle in 1898 on San Juan Hill and in Manila Bay when we defeated them in a 6-month war. Okay? Spain was neutral in World War I, got help from Hitler and Hitler and Mussolini in 1936 to 1939 as Franco overthrew the government and became a fascist dictator there. Spain even supplied a division of infantry. The 250th German Infantry Division was called the Blue Division, and they were Spanish fascist volunteers. They fought on the Eastern Front against the Russians. Look it up. Do not argue this point. Okay, the sun's coming up in the east, and the Blue Division was a thing. All right? Those are 2 immutable facts. Spain is useless in terms of help. They won't let us use their airspace, so Portugal's like, well, screw you. America can use our bases. So Portugal's on the right page. France? No. A no-go zone, folks, is something where, in dealing with radical Islamists, it's a place that's considered unsafe. Okay? In Iraq, just after the Second Gulf War of 2003, there were something like 110 no-go zones all over Iraq. The number shrank into around 40 at one point. Right now, there are over 800 no-go zones in France. Okay? France hasn't been a true dominant power since around 1809. Okay? Their army did a great job of fighting the Germans in World War I and held firm despite having massive mutinies in 1916 and I believe into 1917. But they couldn't win the war on their own, even with British help, even with the Russians providing help on the Eastern Front. It took an infusion of 10,000 American troops a day at one point in 1918 to help turn the tide. Okay? In 1940, they inflicted fewer casualties when their country was overrun than Poland did, and Poland had a smaller army, fewer tanks, virtually no significant air force, less technology, and a national budget that was smaller than the budget of the City of London at the time. Okay? Britain, Keir Starmer is a piece of shit, okay? He's just a weak little wanker. And what did the British do in response to the IRGC launching missiles at British-controlled areas in Cyprus? They sent 2 helicopters. 2. Not 1, but 2. Because 2 is better than 1. 15 would be better than that. But remember, the British Army right now in 2026 has around 50 tanks total. And I bet a third of them aren't even serviceable. Okay? So the British Army has fewer tanks now than occupied a single armored brigade in 1944 in their army. All right? Now, granted, they're not in an active world war. But they don't really want to be because Islamists have taken over their nation. And by the way, there was a Muslim who was a high mucky-muck in Al-Qaeda and a good buddy of Osama bin Laden, whom authorities were trying to deport years and years ago. Guess who his defense barrister was? A fellow named Keir Starmer. Starmer is compromised. He's in the pocket of the Islamists. Britain is compromised to the point where we're no longer sharing all of our intelligence with them because the British government can no longer be trusted. All right? Remember, France still never paid us back the $6 a day we charged them per troop that we supplied and fed and clothed and armed in World War II when we were backing up the Free French forces under that arrogant 2-meter-tall piece of shit, Charles de Gaulle. Okay? Sorry, don't think much of him. He was called back then Charles sans terre, which meant Charles without a country, by his detractors, because he really didn't have one. But somehow he rose through the political ranks from being a divisional commander in 1940 to leading Free French forces a couple years later. I'm still trying to work out exactly how that happened, but he managed to finagle that. And proceeded to be a prick to us at every possible opportunity. Like Eisenhower, you should really read about how absolutely little like Eisenhower enjoyed having to interact with Charles de Gaulle. Since then, the French have had dozens of different governments, and still, we'll see what they do now. They have sent the De Gaulle, their aircraft carrier, into the Eastern Mediterranean. The Greek Navy is actually supplying troops to fight against Iran, supplying troops, not troops, ships, to help protect Cyprus, among other places in the Eastern Mediterranean. Who had that on their bingo card? That the Greek Navy would fight against the Persians in the year 2026. I think it's been since around 490 BC. That it had happened, but I may be off by a century or so there. I'm trying to remember the Battle of Salamis in particular, but anyway, yeah, that's where we stand right now, okay, between weak-kneed Western European powers and these linguini-spined international law experts. You know what? If you don't like what America did, call the international police. Have them write Trump an international ticket. All right? And then you can take that to Dunkin' Donuts with $1.50, and you might get yourself a small coffee. Moving on to sports, because I want to talk about something fun for a minute, and then we're going to get into something else that's kind of sad. I have not really followed the Orioles during spring training. I did see the Honeycutt kid, I forget his first name off the top of my head, has 4 at-bats with the Orioles as of the last time I checked, and he had 4 home runs, okay, which almost sounds impossible. It just sounds almost impossible, but yeah. Honeycutt's got 4 home runs. The rest of the Orioles are looking fairly solid. I was joking with some of the people that follow the Orioles beat professionally a few weeks ago before spring training began, and I still predict that the Orioles will lose 90 games. I still predict that. I'm going to stick with that prediction, and we'll revisit it on July the 1st. But right now, as things stand right now, the Orioles are looking pretty good. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Basically, spring training is like football preseason because neither of them matter except for getting people warmed up. And I love baseball in that regard because they play 25 or 30 games in late February into March to get ready. Then they play 162 to separate the wheat from the chaff. And then at the end, they're like, you know what? Let's get the better teams together and play for another month. Baseball players can play 200 ball games if they stay healthy all year, which is amazing. And I can tell you this much. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. We've got some, and that's why I have a lot of respect for Cal Ripken's streak in particular, because he also played in almost every spring training game, and he played in some postseason games. And granted, the Orioles from 1983 to 96, I don't think saw the postseason, but they did at the beginning and end of Cal's career. And he put in a lot of hard time for that. Now, hold on a minute. I'm trying to find a bookmarked tweet here. Apparently, I didn't bookmark it, but there was a statistic that I can find on my phone here about Joe DiMaggio versus Ted Williams. Now, in 1941, everyone remembers Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak, okay? During those 56 games, by the way, among all the singles, doubles, triples, and home runs that Joe DiMaggio had during that streak, he had 56 singles. So if you spread them out just right, he would have had a single every game, because that's what he averaged. He had 56 singles over this 56-game hitting streak, plus a number of doubles, a couple of triples, and a bunch of home runs. And he hit 408 during that 56-game streak, okay, with an OPS plus OPS, an on-base plus slugging percentage of 1.181, which is pretty strong, okay, pretty strong. A 408 average. 1941 was the last year that a Major League Baseball player hit 400, and it was Ted Williams. And that provides me the perfect segue to the splendid Splinter, the outfielder for the Red Sox, what he did during the same 56-game span. Ted Williams had hits in 55 of those 56 games, but he didn't have the streak because he had one game where he took an offer. He hit 412, which was 4 points higher than Joe DiMaggio, and his OPS was 1.245, which was 64 points higher than DiMaggio. So it could be argued that except for one game where he didn't have a hit, Ted Williams had a better 56-game period in 1941 than Joe did. But give DiMaggio his credit, he still had a hell of a year. And the streak, I don't think that's going to be broken. Because, heck, you're lucky to have players that are even healthy for 56 games in a row. And again, that alludes me to Cal Ripken's streak of 2,632 games played in a row without missing one. And there were games where he was sick and miserable and hurt and sore and tired and, was playing a day game after a night game. And, it wears on you. Even baseball wears on you, especially when you do it from 1982 to 1998 and you don't miss a regular season game. And in that streak, by the way, there was a stretch from 1982 to 1987 where Cal didn't miss a single out of a single game either. In 1982, he started that streak of innings consecutively played, and that ended at, I want to say the number was 8,243. That's the number that sticks in my head. And his father, Cal Sr., who was the manager of the Orioles, at the end of 1987 and for the first 6 games of 1988, and we won't talk about the 1988 Orioles because I really don't feel like crying, Cal's father pulled him out of a game for a late-inning defensive replacement, some, rookie they were trying to get an inning or two at shortstop, and broke the streak. Well, a few games later, Cal got ejected. So the streak was going to end one way or another. It just so happened to be done at the hands of his dad, which, was no big deal because the games played streak, he still started 2,632 games in a row. And that record is one of the ones that will not be broken. One last little baseball statistic. Hank Aaron finished his career with 3,771 hits, 755 of which, of course, were home runs. So even if he didn't hit a home run his whole career, Hank Williams would have still had 3,014 or 3,016 hits. That's impressive. So kudos to the late Hank Aaron for that. And when he got his 715th home run off of Al Downing of the Dodgers in that game, back in 1970, was it 74? Hank Aaron was the last player who had played in the Negro Leagues that was still playing in the majors. Interesting little bit of trivia for you there. Switching over to football, a few days ago, Lou Holtz, the celebrated coach of Notre Dame, and he also coached, at South Carolina. It's not the only place. Notre Dame wasn't the only place he coached, but I remember him the most from coaching at Notre Dame in the 80s and 90s. Passed away. He was 89. My thoughts and prayers go out to his family as well, of course. Let me not neglect the families of everyone who has, except for the IRGC, who has died as a result of the military actions going on in the Middle East right now. But Lou Holtz Lou Holtz told a funny story. He had a lot of jokes. Lou was a funny guy, and he really, he really did. He really did. And the one that I was reminded of, and I'm paraphrasing, but I'm close when I tell you this joke. He said, "Your wife is not your best friend. Your dog is. Lock both of them in the trunk of your car for 2 hours, and then when you open it up, see which one of them is still happy to see you." That was Lou Holtz. Lou Holtz was a great motivator. He was a great coach. He was a decent person, and I miss him because I can remember watching, the night before I went into the Army in January of 1991. I think it was the Orange Bowl. I forget who Notre Dame was playing. Rocket Ismail was actually on the team. I'm looking it up right now, and it was the Cotton Bowl. It was January 1st. No, it wasn't the Cotton Bowl. No, I've got the wrong year entered. And that was 2 years later when they beat USC. It was, there it is. It was the Orange Bowl. Notre Dame was number 5, ranked overall. Colorado was number 1, and Colorado ended up winning 10-9. But in the final 30 seconds of that game, there was a kick-off or a punt, and Rocket Ismail returned it for a very long touchdown. 92 yards. Yep. It got called back on a penalty for an illegal block in the back, and Notre Dame ended up losing the game 10-9. And that still sticks in my craw. And I stayed up late to watch that game, and then the next morning I had to get up at 3 a.m. to join the Army. But I stayed up, and I watched that game because I love Notre Dame. And it was until 11-something that game ended. And I got virtually no sleep when I went in on the 2nd of January, and then didn't sleep again until 9 p.m. Central Time on the 3rd of January. Stayed up straight through the night, the 2nd of the 3rd. It involved a long bus ride from Lambert Field in St. Louis to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, down to the southern part near the town of Rolla. And, you go through reception, and you get your clothing, and I think I had to, as a matter of fact, I had to take, I think I took the D-Lab on the morning of the 3rd, the morning after, or late in the morning of the day that I got there. Actually, no, that's not true. I took it the following day. But that would have been impressive to have passed the D-Lab on no sleep, but whatever. People in the military have done far more than I ever did, so I salute them. You've heard my story in the last podcast, and if you didn't hear the story of my limited time in the Army, then go ahead and listen to it. Now, I didn't have the honor of getting thrown out of the Army like George Carlin did, because he supposedly was discharged for inciting federal troops to riot by convincing guys in the chow line to jump the chow line and beat the shit out of the cooks. That's the story that I heard about George Carlin's time in the Army, so I cannot say that I had that dubious distinction. But moving along now past Lou Holtz, we're going to get into politics real quick. Kristi Noem has been let go, we'll say, as the head of the Department of Homeland Security. Senator Markwayne Mullin will be replacing her. The question that comes from that is, how will this affect close Senate votes? With a Republican seat now open and Mullin not able to vote in the Senate because it's fairly close right now. It's 52-47 Republicans to Democrats if Mullin is out and going to chair DHS. I count Bernie Sanders as a communist. Democrat. Sorry, I repeat myself. because he and all the Dems are actually communists. He caucuses with the Democrats. He tried to seek the Democratic nomination for president multiple times. So he can call himself an independent, but he's really just a communist like the rest of the Democrats. There's a knock on Markwayne Mullin that he is the only senator who doesn't have a college degree. Well, boo-hoo. I didn't have a college degree either, yet despite dropping out at Salisbury University, it was called Salisbury State University when I went in 1988. I went for a month. I actually dropped out of college on my 18th birthday because I have a late birthday. I was a journalism major, and within 7 months had landed a job at a newspaper. I worked it for about a year and went out of that field, went into other things. That was during the stint from 1990 to 2003 when I joined the Army, was out of the Army in a couple of months, and then spent the whole of the 1990s after that, from March of 91 to March of 99, working at Western Publishing, watching coloring books and Bibles and flight information publications for the Defense Mapping Agency and for NOAA, going by on conveyor belts because I ran what was called a rotary gathering machine. It's a bookbinding machine. It makes what people call paperback books are known in the industry as perfect bound. So I worked on a perfect binding line running a 24-pocket Sheridan rotary gatherer and did that for 8 years. And then went into, actually, after that, I delivered pizzas for a while, sold insurance, and then went back into journalism without a degree. Okay, and then proceeded to work from 2003 to 2019 as a sports writer. During that time, I entered a grand total. I personally entered myself in two editorial contests. One with one paper and one with another paper. I entered myself in 2 editorial contests, and I won 3 different editorial awards. I entered 2 individual categories and won 3 awards because other people nominated me and put my stuff in for other awards. So I was a recipient of an Excellence Award from Chesapeake Publishing in 2006. I received I forget what the award was called when I worked for Independent Newspapers, Inc., based out of Dover, Delaware, when I was at the Cambridge, Maryland paper. There was some type of an award that I won there, and I can't remember the name of it. And then I won a Maryland, D.C. editorial award in 2014, I think it was, for a feature. And I didn't have a college degree. Okay, a college degree does not dictate intelligence. It does not really dictate any ability aside from the ability to pay strangers exorbitant nowadays amounts of money to sit in a cinder block dormitory and read books about how other people did shit. Instead of me reading about other people doing shit, I was out actually doing said shit. And I'll take my 17 years of journalism experience over some doe-eyed 23-year-old fresh out of J school who doesn't know their ass from a hole in the ground, but who spent 4 years studying how to write. I'll take my 4 million words in print and gladly put that up against anybody with a college degree any day. Because I made my bones in journalism without a degree. And for people to knock Markwayne Mullin for not having a college degree, well, let's look at the Obama cabinet. The Obama cabinet was littered with PhDs and master's degrees. And they had 8% of their cabinet, 2 out of the 25, members, had actual practical experience in the fields that they were assigned to cover. Okay? Things didn't exactly go swimmingly in the Obama administration. Messed up healthcare. We had a jobless financial recovery from the financial problems of 2008. All right. Absolute feckless and incompetent foreign policy, especially in the war on terror, basically gave birth to ISIS, probably funded them, knowing Obama. Operation Fast and Furious, where they were running guns to Mexican drug cartels. But the Bush administration did the same thing. Yeah, the difference is we actually put geolocator devices on the guns when we did it under the Bush administration. Eric Holder and Barack Obama, Holder was his attorney general, they didn't bother with the RFID things. They just went ahead and gave the guns to the cartels. And now, oh look, the cartels are a problem in Mexico. They control 70% of the land there, and the president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, is in their pocket. Huh. Can you say failed narco state? Because that's what they are. All right, I hope they get their act together, but it's going to be a long time coming. Hopefully, Scheinbaum will see the example of what we've done with Maduro and what we've done with Khamenei. And I'm not advocating violence against Mexico, but maybe if your next door neighbor beats the shit out of bullies, maybe don't let yourself be controlled by bullies. I don't know. It's just a thought, but we'll move along now. Moving to Texas in particular, where some political primaries took place earlier this week, and we got to say goodbye to a couple of our friends. Al Green, who's tried 6 times to impeach President Trump, who can't keep his trap shut whenever Trump gives a State of the Union address, lost in his primary. Well, he was finished second in his primary, but nobody got 50% of the vote, so he's going to a runoff, and he's going to lose. But it's okay, because Geico has called him asking if he wants to be the new caveman for their next series of ads. Okay, because if anybody ever looked like a fucking Neanderthal, it's Al Green. Next, Jasmine Crockashit lost her job. Aw, she got primaried and lost to James Tallarico, the most educated... Jasmine Crockashit, the most educated idiot in Congress, is out of work. She actually had a very elite education, went to private schools, parents spent a lot of money on her, and then she affects this hood rat patois that she thinks is going to make her, she's a social media whore. That's basically what she is. She's out there for clicks and attention because she's a narcissist. And deep down, she's a moron. Okay? As I told a coworker one time who had just gotten an associate's degree and had about a room temperature IQ, the only thing you get when you send an idiot to college is an idiot that knows where the college is. Okay? And I stand by that as well. But the person that defeated Jasmine Crockashit is a man by the name of James Tallarico, who's going to lose by 11 points. I've already bookmarked my own tweet saying it. He's going to lose by 11 points in the Senate race against either Ken Paxton or John Cornyn, who I think they're in a runoff as well. Cornyn is the incumbent Republican senator there, and the winner of that runoff will face Tallarico. But Tallarico is an open border socialist who quotes heretical texts from the Bible that got cut. And to be honest, he looks like Alfred E. Newman from the old Mad magazine. He's smarmy, he's soulless, and he has all the charisma of an impacted wisdom tooth. But there are people that think that running an economy on envy, which is basically what socialism is, running an entire governmental system on envy, is the way to go. I understand 38% of people in America think that socialism is worth a try. So it stands to reason. Yeah. Stands to reason. Because 48% of them voted for Kamala Heels Up Harris in the last election. So, yeah, there's a lot of dummies in this country. There really are. A lot of economically ignorant people. And it's a big failure of our public schools because they don't teach kids how to think critically anymore. They don't teach them how to think anymore. They don't teach them how to register to vote. They don't teach them how to balance a checkbook. They don't teach them how to change the oil in a car. They don't teach them a lot of life skills. I learned how to balance a checkbook in high school. I was taught where to go to register to vote and to register for selective service when I turned 18, and I did those things. Now, I didn't learn how to change the oil in a car when I was in high school because I didn't go to the VOTEC school, the vocational technical school, because I didn't want to be a mechanic. But I learned it on my own because I had a father who taught me that you unscrew this one screw, you take this filter out, you let the oil drain, you put another filter in, you put more oil in. Done! That's it. That's all there is. As Chris Porter, the comedian, said, I didn't miss a step. That's the whole process. But some people can't do that. I guess it's the fear of getting their hands dirty. I'm not big on getting my hands dirty. And that, to be honest, is part of why I never became a mechanic. Because my dad's hands are permanently stained by motor oil. And I didn't want that. Plus, I always was afraid of getting underneath the car. I got a little claustrophobic and was afraid the daggone thing would fall on me. Especially if you had it up on a jack. So, well, particularly when you had it up on a jack. It's not going to fall on you otherwise. But anyway, we'll move on. Tallarico is a snake oil salesman. He's morally bankrupt. And to be honest, The Dems are better off lighting money on frickin' fire than wasting it on this clown's bid for a Senate seat, because he's going to lose. He's going to lose badly, and if you lose by 11 points, that's a butt kicking, and he's going to get his butt kicked. So there it is. And then our last unfortunate casualty, Dan Crenshaw, who's a Republican. He's a rhino, turned into kind of an asshole, and then got really rich, taking advantage of his position in Congress to do some insider stock trading and made himself more money. He actually did better at the insider trading scam than Nancy Pelosi did, and she turned it into a friggin' science. It shouldn't be legal, and many have said this, for people who are in an elected position of power to have any ability to trade stocks, because they have the ability to influence stock prices through the legislation that they pass. Okay, if you're a friend of the oil and gas lobby and you start passing legislation to the oil and gas industries, they're going to make more money. And if you own stock in those companies, having bought it before the legislation went through, you stand to profit enormously. It's a very simple equation, kind of like voter ID. Either you believe that people should have to identify themselves in order to vote, or you believe in vote fraud. There is no middle ground. There is no, well, people are too poor. Women and black people are too stupid to get an ID. No, sorry, not buying it. There are free IDs available anywhere, and I don't know a single person, female or black, who doesn't have the proper identification on them. If you gotta show your ID to buy a freaking beer, okay, you should really need to do it to decide the future of the nation. Liberals think the following things, and I'm about to get to a list on it. Liberals think that voting is an enshrined human right that should not be interfered with in any way, shape, or form, but they also think that the Second Amendment is an enshrined human right that should be regulated and limited as much as humanly freaking possible. So, you got to pick a hole here, guys. You got to pick a hole. Because the things that liberals believe are insane. And here's a list, courtesy of a fellow named, goes by the handle Mike Bieski on Twitter. It's BSKI Mike 22802. And the complete and growing list of things the left simultaneously believes. You ready? I am a science teacher. In science, I teach my students that a hypothesis that contradicts itself is invalid. So I made a list. Here it is. Buckle up. This one's going to take a minute. Number 1, my body, my choice. But you must get a vaccine or lose your job, your ability to travel, and your right to eat inside a restaurant. Both things at the same time. Believe all women. Unless the woman is Tara Reid, Juanita Broderick, or Paula Jones. These women apparently came with an asterisk nobody mentioned. Tax the rich. Said by a woman, Nancy Pelosi, worth $120 million. A man worth $9 million, Chuck Schumer. A senator who owns 3 houses, Bernie Sanders. All while their stock portfolios grow on insider access the rest of us never have and never will have. I've already mentioned old Nancy Pelosi. By the way, my Maryland friends, you may remember that Nancy is from the D'Alessandro political family. Her father, I think, was the mayor of Baltimore at one point. She's a Marylander by birth. So she took all that socialist crap and ran west with it. Go west, young commie. Anyway, number 4, they're outraged about billionaires having too much power and then accept $1.6 billion from George Soros without blinking. Quinn's Law number 7. It is different when you're a Democrat. Defund the police and then hire private security for themselves. I am not making that up. Multiple city council members who voted to defund their police departments had private taxpayer-funded security at the same time. You literally cannot invent this. No one is above the law until a federal judge in Wisconsin helped a criminal evade ICE agents and half the party defended her. Look it up. I remember this in particular. Judge Hannah Dugan, Hannah Dugan, Dugan. Look it up. Suddenly, no one is above the law had an exemption for people who agree with them. Science is real. Number 7, but a biological male who pretends to be a woman is medically, biologically, and athletically identical to a biological female. Just go ahead and ignore the fields of endocrinology, genetics, and sports medicine while you're at it. Number 8, we support the working class, and then they vote against no tax on tips and no tax on overtime. every single Democrat voted against the one big beautiful bill. The Party of Workers apparently does not want them to keep their own money. We need more gun control to stop violence, point number 9. But releasing violent criminals back onto the street with zero bail is compassion. The criminal is not the problem. The gun on the shelf of the law-abiding citizen is the problem. Okay, someone needs to explain that logic to me using small words. Yeah, basically, gun control is like telling people who don't drink they can't drive because of drunk drivers. That's pretty much the analogy that works fairly well for me. They want a number point 10. They want a $20 minimum wage to help the poor worker. And then they celebrate the illegal immigration system that lets employers pay $6 an hour in cash with zero benefits to people who can't say anything without being deported. Now, to be fair, businesses on both sides of the political aisle do this. They are businesses owned by Republicans as well as Democrats who employ illegal immigrant labor because it's cheaper and because they can't complain. That is not progressive. That is the economic model of the pre-Civil War South, but with extra steps. Now, we are pro-union, number 11, and then they fought tooth and nail against school choice, which would allow poor minority children to escape failing schools. The teachers' union funds the Democrats. 99%, by the way, of the political donations from teachers' unions go to Democratic politicians and candidates. This is a mathematical reality. This is not an opinion. Their priorities are perfectly clear. Number 12, the borders are secure, announced by Biden's auto pen while 8 million people crossed illegally in 4 years. And I'm sure it was probably more than that. For example, by comparison, the population of Virginia is 8 million people. An entire state's worth of unvetted people. But the border's secure. Okay. They called DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, an attack on government, point 13, but cannot name a single program it should cut. Not one. They're against cutting fraud. They're against cutting waste. They're against cutting abuse. I'm genuinely asking, what exactly are they trying to protect there? Number 14, reducing the budget deficit is important. Announced every election cycle by people who have never once voted for a budget that reduced the deficit. The problem is that not just do they not vote for a budget that reduces the deficit, budgets themselves aren't really voted on anymore. What ends up happening is this hodgepodge continual voting on continuing resolutions or CRs, like the omnibus CR bill that caused such a rage and a stir, and the CR that just recently involved Homeland Security funding, including ICE. We don't vote on budgets anymore at the congressional level. We just vote on pieces of budgets for individual departments and turn every aspect of government into a freaking can that gets kicked down the road. The problem is the can's actually a hand grenade, and it's going to blow up on us eventually. $38 trillion, by the way, in national debt. I've mentioned this before. And our GAAP, our unfunded liabilities, go to usdebtclock.org and look down at the bottom of the page. It's $100+ trillion. That's really how much money the government is in the hole. It's just the $38 trillion is the current operating debt. The unfunded liabilities is all of the stuff that's been promised that hasn't been paid yet. Number 15, they want to cancel student loan debt for people who voluntarily signed loan agreements, but they will not absolutely cancel your mortgage or your car payment or your credit card balance. The magical debt cancellation only applies to the demographic that votes for them. Totally not transactional, not at all. Furthermore, let's not forget that one of the provisions of the PPACA, the Obamacare bill that got passed entirely by Democrats in the dark of night in 2010, included a provision that facilitated and made happen a federal takeover of the student loan industry. There was a time when people who declared bankruptcy could list their student loans. Since they are now federal student loans, and it's the federal government you go to for a bankruptcy proceeding, they can no longer list their student loans in bankruptcy proceedings. People with these student loans are saddled with them for life. Okay, now remember, these are the people that think 16-year-olds can vote, and 16-year-olds should have access to all manner of drugs, marijuana, and drink alcohol and do whatever they want. But at 18, when they're signing a loan agreement, they're not capable of making a smart decision. Kind of weird, isn't it? So the Democrats created the problem by having the federal government take over the student loan industry. What that meant was all student loans were then guaranteed by the federal government. And what that guarantee means is that no matter what, that student loan would be paid. Well, what would you do if you were running a college and you just found out that nobody could default on your loans anymore? Because if they did, they'd get their wages garnished. And that's what's happening right now to people who are defaulting. You know what's going to happen? You're going to raise tuitions. And oh, look, as soon as PPACA passed, student tuitions skyrocketed. There are charts for this. There are studies on this. You can look it up. The sky is blue, and this happened. It's a direct result. These are two immutable facts. Okay, we're going to move down a little bit. Number 17, we are the party of science. And then they told you masks did not work. Then they did work. Then one was enough. Then two were required. Then cloth ones counted. Then they didn't. Anybody remember Alyssa Milano wearing a mask that was crocheted and had holes in it you could stick your frickin' finger through? Yeah, these are the people that were telling us to wear masks. Now remember, anyone who asked a follow-up question was considered anti-science. It wasn't science, folks. It was a beta test in controlling a population. It was compliance theater, as Mike puts it. Okay? Just so you know, the COVID virus is 0.3 microns in size. To put that into a measurement you and I can understand, that's 1/80,000th of an inch. So, for scale, if the COVID virus was the size of a basketball, the holes in those paper masks that everybody was pulling out of boxes were 1.5 miles wide for the purposes of scale. Okay? The masks didn't help. But you still had to wear them. And my wife still has some hanging off of the gear shifter of our car. Yeah. Worked really well, huh? Number 18. The left supported Luigi Mangione, the man who murdered a health insurance CEO, as a folk hero and a symbol of justified rage against insurance companies. And now they want you to keep the ACA and the subsidies which funnel billions to the same insurance companies. I genuinely cannot keep up, okay? Number 19, we need to get money out of politics. And then they raised $1 billion for Hillary in 2016 and $900 million for Biden's auto pen in 2020 and well over $1 billion for the whore from California in 2024. One nation under Willie Brown. Sorry, folks, didn't happen. America was better than that. Number 20, they said the economy under Biden's auto pen was great and prices were fine. And then when the ACA COVID subsidies expired, they screamed that people would not be able to afford their health insurance. So which is it? Was the economy great, or were people so financially destroyed they couldn't pay their own premiums? You have to pick a lane. Number 21, diversity is our strength. But every single diverse thinker who leaves the Democrat reservation, Clarence Thomas, Tim Scott, I'm not mentioning that one, she's nuts, Larry Elder, gets called a race traitor, an Uncle Tom, or worse. The diversity of skin color is welcome. The diversity of thought is absolutely not. Okay? Number 22, and I can add to number 22, we support women. And then every single Democrat voted against the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act on January 14th, 2025. Every single one. Girls can lose their scholarships, their safety, and their athletic careers, but at least the Democrats have the right bumper sticker. And the whole we support women thing, just yesterday or the day before, and there were 100 plus Republicans too that voted to do this. So the Republicans are not immune from criticism here. 300, I want to say around 350 to around 75 was the vote against publicly releasing information about settlements paid by members of Congress to individuals for sexual harassment and other similar claims. And by the way, just about, well, not every single, but all but a handful of Democrats voted in favor of keeping the sexual peccadillos of Congress members silent. They will scream about the Epstein files and then protect themselves. Don't let it fool you, folks. Don't let it get twisted. All right. Number 23, they say the January 6th protesters, it's only English, protesters were insurrectionists who nearly destroyed democracy. But the people who spent the summer of the previous year burning federal courthouses, attacking police precincts, and occupying city blocks in places like Seattle and Minneapolis were peaceful protesters exercising their constitutional rights. Oh, by the way, when we weren't allowed to gather in large crowds because of COVID, all those riots were allowed because they were necessary political protests, and it was okay to go out and be part of a big crowd then. Let's not forget that. Now, this list is quite long. Now, I'm on, point 23 or so, and I see 40-plus points. Okay? I can't get into all this because the podcast was run close to 2 hours, and I can't do that. But here's what all of these have in common. They're not accidents. They're not oversights. They're not cases of good intentions producing bad outcomes. They are a pattern, Mike claims. And Quinn's Law number 2 tells you exactly what to do with a pattern like this. If you want to know what liberals are up to, pay attention to what they accuse conservatives of doing, because their accusations are actually confessions. They're accusing their political opponents of that which they're actually doing themselves. It's called projection. In psychological terms, it's an ego defense mechanism. And it's what people do to hide from the realities of their own crimes and sins. All right, save this list, he says. Next time someone tells you conservatives are anti-science, anti-women, anti-democracy, or anti-worker, just scroll back through it. Every single item's documented. Everyone's verifiable. Not a single one requires you to believe anything on faith. So there you go. All right. And while you're here, 50,000 combat wounded veterans are having their military pay stolen, their retirement pay, by the government right now. The Major Richard Starr Act, Senate Amendment 4056, fixes it. $800 million a year, which, think about that. That's abysmally small pathetically small compared to some of the things. For instance, Obama blew $90 billion on green energy projects that ended up not employing anyone long term. Okay? We spent more on that than that in a single week under Biden without a single Republican vote. There's a petition. There's a link to the petition. But what do I know? I'm only a science teacher who requires a hypothesis to be internally consistent before I accept it as valid, which is apparently a completely radical idea in 2026. So kudos to Mike Bieske on that one. Very interesting and compelling list of information there. Moving on. I filed this under politics because it's about idiots trying to inject their politics into a film. From what I understand, James Bond, the 26th film, is going to have non-binary actor and LGBTQAIPIO themes in it. So here it is, folks. James Bond is dead now, too. And I got to level with you. I will be so glad when this stupid trend of ruining every possible IP in entertainment by making it lame and gay is over. Because the last 10 years or so have been a hellscape of god-awful television, pathetically bad movies, and a level of self-righteousness that is unconscionably high. There are scientists at Fordham University that have invented a device that is incapable, despite being nuclear powered, of measuring that level of self-righteousness, okay? It's just insane. It's absolutely insane. And now I've got to read you... I don't know how to preface this story. It's really sad. It's also really ironic in a sad way, and I'm not being sarcastic. This comes from Greenwood Village, Colorado. And I've got to find the story. Hold on. Sorry for the little bit of dead air time there. It breaks my heart to read this. Okay, it's about an 82-year-old man who was killed at an intersection in Greenwood Village, Colorado. And hold on.
Avenue and Franklin Street. Hey everyone, this is Dan Grossman with Denver 7. We are following up on Monday's fatal car crash on East Bellevue Avenue and Franklin Street. You can see the flowers that have been gathering here to honor the man who was killed in that crash. It turns out he had been petitioning for a traffic light at this very intersection for years because his wife was also killed in a traffic accident right here years ago. So we wanted to figure out what the city of Greenwood Village and Cherry Hills Village are doing to figure out this whole traffic light situation. We've heard from several people along this road. They say the speed limit, 35 miles per hour. They say tons of cars just come flying through here. Another issue, I'm going to step back a little bit so you can see this. This is the intersection where people turn onto the road. If you take a look, it's almost a blind turn. You have trees as well as sound guards blocking both ways. We did some digging, found that CDOT had done a study in 2024 finding that speeding was an issue along this intersection. So it said that a traffic light was warranted. We reached out to the city of Greenwood Village as well as Cherry Hills Village about what they're doing to make that a reality for the people who've been petitioning for a while in this community. They said that they are expediting some of the meetings that they are going to be having in the next few months to make sure that they can figure out what is going to happen and whether a traffic light will be coming to this intersection.
Now that's from Dan Grossman, a reporter with Channel 7 News out of Denver. It is an ABC affiliate. And this from the Denver Gazette. Man dies in crash at intersection where he petitioned for traffic light after his wife's death. This came out 2 days ago and is, the byline is by 9 News. 82-year-old Jerry Goldberg lost his wife in the spring of 2024 to a crash at this intersection. I believe she was walking across the street and got hit by a car. And Jerry himself was killed at the same intersection just a couple days ago. I put this under politics because this falls at the feet of politicians. His wife died in May of 2024. And 22 months later, he died at basically the same place. The moral of this story is government doesn't care about you. Bureaucrats do not care about you. Politicians only care about maintaining power and staying in office and getting reelected. Bureaucrats only care about crossing the T's and dotting the I's and doing the paperwork until they get their gold watch at retirement. They don't care about you. And that's got to change. I'm a strong believer in referendums, and we need to have more of them. It would make us more of a direct democracy than the representative constitutional republic that we are now, but it's a necessary thing. Because there are situations like this where it's a relatively minor thing that a fix could have saved lives and prevented just so many tragedies and so many other instances as well. But it didn't get done. And now Mr. Goldberg's gone. And I don't know what else to say about this. So, I just don't know what to say. This is really, really tragic and really, really stupid and really, really preventable. Okay? According to his cousin, Gloria, she said, quote, "I tried to call him and tried to text him. No answer at all. She was waiting for her cousin who was going to come by to visit. They were going to meet at a restaurant at noon, and he wasn't there," she said. "And I went home with a very empty feeling that something was askew because that was not like him." And Yeah, his wife, Jerry's wife, Andy, was hit and killed by a car in May of 2024. And as Jerry said, due to the death of Andy, I've been thinking of how much it means to me going forward that nothing like this ever happens again to any neighborhood people or anyone using that intersection. He had said previously while petitioning for a traffic light at the intersection. He spoke out last fall about the petition drive he started, hoping to get a traffic light installed. It would give me a great deal of resolve for closure in the loss of my wife. But on Monday, as he drove to meet his cousin, Gloria, Jerry was killed in a crash there. And actually, I'm looking at a photo right now of the crash scene. And as Gloria said, his cousin, it's almost like science fiction. I was in shock, of course. I couldn't sleep all night. It was just unimaginable. Unimaginable. And a Greenwood Village spokesman, as KKCO11news.com reports, said the proposal is still being reviewed. Well, keep reviewing it, asshole. Keep reviewing it. I hope the estate of Jerry Goldberg and Andy Goldberg sues the living shit out of Greenwood Village. And I hope that it drives them into financial insolvency or the termination of everyone who had worked there since May of 2024 in any capacity. I think that would be justice. But what do I know? Now let's move on. We're moving on into Dragons, and we're going to be talking about Dungeons and Dragons. D&D has officially now, under the aegis of Hasbro Wizards of the Coast, they're now calling the recent reboot from a year or two back 5.5 Dungeons and Dragons. Not that it really matters, because people aren't buying the Sparkle Troll garbage. There are rumors about that Wizards Hasbro are getting desperate, and they're dragging out the old names to help push the PR campaign and to create a 6th edition of Dungeons & Dragons. Now, for clarity, D&D died to me a couple years ago. It had been on life support realistically since 2008 when they went from 3.5 edition to 4th edition, and I get games undergo rule revisions. Call of Cthulhu is in like its 7th. Paranoia is in like its 9th. There are a number of different systems. Warhammer, I think, is in its 5th edition, the fantasy role-play game. But it just keeps getting worse. Okay? 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons is basically like D&D with training wheels. And then the Sparkle Troll crap that they put out in the last couple of years with characters in wheelchairs. Like a cave system outside the Keep on the Borderlands is going to be fucking ADA compliant. I'm really sure the goblins care about your differently abled, neurologically divergent wizard coming through on 4 wheels. I'm sure that's going to happen. Okay? Good luck with that. You'll be lucky to get it up or down a hill. But, hey, whatever, man. We got to include everybody. Because I want to pretend to be crippled when I play D&D. Because as we all know, people that can't walk make the best fighters. Just stupid crap. And basically from all the PR, the advertising, the art that's come out the last couple of years, is Wizards Hasbro has basically turned Dungeons & Dragons into some kind of a weird, furry, gay dating game. Instead of it being, let's beat the snot out of some goblins, grab some gold, and go get drunk, is what it was. So now it's, I don't want to even discuss what it is now, because they're dead to me, and we're done. And that's why I am producing things for earlier versions. I am, I guess, part of the old school revival, the OSR, and have put out some stuff on Patreon, including free, by the way. Now, memberships on my Patreon page are free. They start at free, and they go up to $3, $5.99, $8.99, and $11.99 a month. So for $3 a month, you can get in on some good stuff. $3, guys. You're not going to find that on a lot of sites, okay? Wizards of the Coast costs more than that. Amazon Prime, which still runs ads, is $18 a month. $15, $16, $18 a month. And Netflix starts at $10, I think, and is full of ads, and you don't even get access to everything at $10 a month. For $12 a month, $11.99, you get access to everything on mine, and we've got a ton of crap coming out, okay? It's a matter of I've got a bottleneck creatively because I can only type for so many hours a day. I can only do stuff for so many hours a day, and writing novels is where I'm at right now, and I've got to get the Mustard Seed knocked out. I can put out other stuff in the meantime, but once Mustard Seed is done, then we will have a flood of gaming material coming out. The first thing that has already come out for free is what I'm doing is I took my very first D&D character. His original name was El Arunde, and he was, as I pictured him, a swashbuckling Spanish elf. Okay? And back in basic Dungeons & Dragons, what's called BECMI, B-E-C-M-I, the race of elf was its own character class. You could play an elf, you could play a dwarf, you could play a halfling. And they were their own character classes that had their own special abilities, as in addition to being a fighter, a magic user, a cleric, or a thief. And I've created a level 1 character sheet for Elnish Arundel, which was his revised name once I got older and wiser in high school. And that is available on the website for free. And I've decided that his journal, The Diary of an Elf, is going to be coming out soon, and I'm going to have to write that concurrently with the Mustard Seed, because it's got to come out now, too. It's pushing its way through the bottleneck. So you're going to be able to read installments of the adventurer's journal from an elf who went through all manner of stuff. And we will get to the point where he makes the conversion from basic D&D to advanced, possibly, or I might keep it in basic. It depends. There were enough BECMI modules that we ran him through that I could definitely write a full journal on the BECMI stuff. That's probably where I'll keep it. But there are so many things here. Imagine having so many ideas you don't have the time to write them down. Thank God my writer's block is over. Thank God. It is, and I'm just so glad. But we're going to wrap things up. First, I got to tell you a little story. I made a bad mistake the other day. My wife was taking a shower. And now, every now and then, when your wife's taking a shower, if you're a good and responsible and dutiful and caring husband, when your wife's taking a shower, you reach in and you pinch her on the butt. Or other things, which we won't get into. Well, I didn't do that. I just came in and quietly, so as not to bother her, because sometimes she can get startled, I just went in and used the toilet. I had to pee. And I flushed the toilet. Well, what do? What happens usually when you flush the toilet and someone 3 feet away from you is taking a shower? The water instantly gets ultra, ultra hot because the cold water is going into the toilet. Well, I did that. And then I compounded the error by washing my hands because I'm a functioning adult. And after I pee poop, I wash my hands. Call me crazy. So, David, wife says, oh, sorry. Well, sorry wasn't enough. She then got out of the shower a moment later when she was done, put a towel around her shoulders, marched down to the other end of the house, and she's standing naked in the doorway to our bedroom, still dripping wet. I was like, what's wrong? I'm mad. I said, well, wearing that cape around your shoulders, I pointed to the towel. I said, wearing that cape around your shoulders, you kind of look like you're super mad. You know what? That was the wrong thing to say. That was the wrong thing to say. So, anyway, honey, I apologize, but I liked what I saw. So there's that. And yes, folks, that was joke time. We don't have anecdotal evidence segment this time. We're just going to head on over to Final Thought. We're pushing an hour 15. And Final Thought is this. We're going to segue back to the international law thing. Oh, and by the way, I did get to mention of the other thing I was writing on Patreon out, The Diary of the Elf. There you go. Final Thought is this. If you hate a president so much, you're willing to side with a dictator who murders protesters, hangs people for being gay. By the way, when the IRGC was murdering people for being gay, because homosexuality is a capital offense in Iran under the IRGC, they used construction cranes. So they would hang them 50 feet in the air and leave their bodies dangling for days and weeks on end as a lesson. Okay? They killed women for showing their hair in public. They murdered women for committing the crime, quote unquote, of being a victim of rape. Because that was considered adultery, even though they were not voluntarily consenting to the act. They were raped, and so they were punished for the adultery by being stoned or set on fire or however else they murdered these poor women. If you're willing to side with a dictator who does that because you hate a president so much, you're not just on the wrong side of history, because the lefties have a real hard-on for being on the right side of history. They're not just on the wrong side of history, they're on the wrong side of pretty much every possible moral issue. And you need to rethink your life if that's how you are. Okay, presidents come and go. But if your moral compass is this misaligned, you need professional help. Like I said before, and so many others have said before me, liberalism is a mental disease. Okay? And now we're going to wrap things up. I thank you for listening. Remember, follow us on Twitter. We're at the WSPD Podcast. On TikTok, it's all one big long word. Actually, I just changed it. Yeah, we are on TikTok now, by the way. And I think the handle is WSP Dragons. We only have one video out right now, which is a dedication video that I dedicate everything I do in the memory of our beloved daughter, Paige, who passed away 3 years ago. You can help sponsor us through our Patreon page, help us pay the bills. It's patreon.com/WSP Dragons. We are on the talk now, as it says. Yeah, here we go. I jumped ahead in the script, basically. And our TikTok is WSP Dragons. Join us there. We will be doing videos. You can also help us upgrade our equipment and pay our electric bill via Cash App and Venmo at both. That handle is WSPD Pod. And as always, you can hear us on Spotify, where we started. Please follow us there, as well as iHeartRadio, Audible, and Amazon. Apple Podcasts are coming soon. I'm just not smart enough to get that glitch figured out. So there it is, folks. I am David the Nerd Emperor signing off. I thank you for your time. I hope you have a great weekend. And free Iran!